evening to Boya Bota, Boya Lamugu. Um, uh, Families are fine. Mr. Aro, I'm sorry, I'll go and accept you now. I hardly accept people nowadays because of unfriendly friends. You get. I want to thank all of you. I was not supposed to come out today. I was not supposed to come out today because it's quite a very sad week for me. Um, I lost a father, a mentor, and a legend. Some of you might have been following me for the past 3, 4 years, and I'm going to give you a little bit historical background of how it all started and the role my mentor played in inspiring me to pick up interest in Benin history. I've had quite a lot of amazing souls who has contributed to my growth in understanding some very vital aspects of our history. Amongst all of these people, the most integral of all of these legends, the most integral of all of these legends that have contributed to my life is Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa. Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa. Um, so, if it's any person who has been inspired by his works, if there's any person who have always patterned his life of being sometime in the future um, like him, that would have been that will be me. I'm currently doing a project that I was supposed to unveil, that I will still unveil November 14 this year. That project was a project that he started November 14, 1986. I've always told him that some of the things that he couldn't achieve, that I was going to help him achieve all of them. The same thing I tell Chief Samigbe, the Asher of Benin. But because I knew, we spoke 3 weeks ago. All right, we spoke 3 weeks ago. I was to do some certain things for the family. Um, so that was when I was telling a couple of friends of mine that daddy will not be with us for that long anymore because he barely could speak. I promised him that I was going to come and see him. I didn't know that I wouldn't be seeing him anymore. So, well, I was first introduced to a in 2017. I was just for some of us, for some of the people who have knew me quite a long time ago, knew that all that I know, I own it. I don't. I respect that wish, the ladder that I've climbed to where I am today. Everything that I own it to the Institute for Benin Studies. All right, it is true. Institute for Benin Studies. I read a book, and I was supposed to come. I've not fully unpacked in my new house, so I'm going to be introducing all of the books, some of the books of Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa to everybody. But this was the very first book I read. Abi, everybody can see. This was the very first book that I read of all of Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa's work. And the title of the book is Elegbe, Prince of Benin, and the Orion territories. All right. If you can see the statue there, this is a telegraphic stool that Obavorame was using to communicate with his people while he was in Calabar. So this was the very first book I read, 2017, and I wanted to meet him after I read this work, after I read this very book, and while I was contemplating on reaching him, I also stumbled at the Institute for Benin Studies on this other very fantastic book, EY, the first Oba of Benin. So also this was about the second book I read before I was privileged to meet with him in 2017. So I met with him. He was friendly. He was always friendly. So then we started talking. So I discovered he was a medical doctor, a medical surgeon, right? One of the very, very best. At one point in time, became the head of all the physicians in Bendel, Edo and Delta. He was also a military personnel because he had partook in during the Civil War. Okay. Anyway, we had I had a very robust conversation with him, and the very first day I met with him, and I had to interact with him. I asked him a couple of questions about some of the things that I read. He put me through. Then, knowing fully well that me and him were quite a very similar, all right? He's from a medical background, and I also have a bit of knowledge about basic medicine because my first degree was on medical biochemistry. So we sort of related. We sort of related in different. We sort of related. I think the volume. I think the volume is up. We sort of related in a father or son sort of relationship. I was pleased because he had an open door and he was able to relate with me as foundational as it could seem. These kind of interaction that I had with him started to create webs of ways, started to inspire me to pick interest even more on Benin matters. Um, then he told me a story, one of his favorite story. I think last year I had to tell him that, Daddy, Osugba Benue to Hana my man. Kabitama and that sort of thing. Oh, yeah, we can't when and boy, you need to Hana Mawa. The story was about this Iwu, the body markings of the Edo people. All right? The story was about Iwu, the body markings of the Edo people. Now, for some of you who are not aware, he was a personal medical surgeon. He was a personal medical physician to Obaridi of blessed memory. He was also a personal physician to Queen Arawa, the Queen Mother, Obaridi mother. Now, after Obaridi, this is him narrating the story that during the thank you visitation that Obaridi embarked on between 1918 and 1981, he came back with a story. The story was about every single places that Obaridi during his Obaridi was coronated March 23rd, 1979. So his thank you visitation started in between 1980 1981. So everywhere that Obaredia visited in almost about the 3 months journey that he embarked on, a particular question was asked: what was the Benin? What was the identity of the Edo people? Monedo yo na ya Edo at that time in the 80s, in the early 80s, we were not having a clothing, a wear, a cloth that we will wear that people will say, ah, these people, they be Edo people. There were nothing like that. There was nothing like that. So that means we're people without a cultural, a clothing identification. All right. So every single places of Bavaria during the thank you visitation, it was asked that question that we don't know your people because there is nothing unique. There is no cloth worn by any of your people that came to receive you in this particular state and all of that. I think at that time we're operating 19 states. We're in 36 states at that time. Nigeria was operating 19 states. All of the states that Obaredia had visited at that time, none of the Edo people that was present in all of those states that received him had a, a clothing that other people could use to identify if they were Benin men or women. All right? So, now, Obaredia had a very successful national tour on Thank You Visitation in 1980, but he came back with a story. The story was about whoever that can be able to come up with a concept of the Benin clothing, Ewedo, Niviedo Agayo, Naya Heve, Iviedo Yahin, a self identification through clothing. All right, this was the message that Obaredia kept preaching a few months after he returned from the thank you visitation. So one of these days, Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa went to see the monarch, and he was trying to, doing as a medical doctor, was trying to examine and all of that. So in course of that, him and one of the princes of Obaredia, our son, were sitting in one of the inner chambers of Obaredia, where Obaredia also spoke about these unfavorable trends, something that is hurtful, something that is painful to him, that there is nothing that people can easily identify the Edo people with. All right? Then he was just saying it, not like he gave it as an assignment to Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa. So, but Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa could see the pain in Obaredia's heart of trying to solve that problem of the Benin people, of having an identification that they can call their own, something, a cloth that an Edoma will wear, that he or she can be easily recognized that, okay, it's an Edoma. Just like when a Yoruba person wears agbada or boba and shokoto and all of that, you just know, or bend a scarf for one, all of that. You just know that these are Yoruba people. When an Orobo person wears their rounded hats and all of that, their walking stick, this is an Orobo person. The Benins were not having that kind of clothing until in the 80s. All right, this was how the old clothing came about. So Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa went home, all right, understanding that this was a national issue of the Edo people and that needed to be resolved. But in his mind, he knows how unreceptive the Edo people are to uh, uh, to sort of new ideas. He knew that whatever that he must have to think through, he has to think it through in a way that it is already the practice of the Edo people. Otherwise, if it is too foreign, or if it's absolutely foreign, the Edo people will not accept his idea of what he was going to propose. So According to the narration that he gave to me in 2017, 2018, he told me the story for more than 10 times. Okay. So was he kept thinking about it. He kept thinking about it. He kept thinking about it. He kept thinking about it for weeks. Then one day he went to Uselu to take care of the Queen Mother, Queen Arawa. Then she now saw the beautiful, according to him, it is the most beautiful, flamboyant, most revealing evil body mark that he has ever seen in his entire life on the body of the Queen Mother. Then he said to himself, this might be the answer to the puzzle of Obairedia. Then he went home. He started to ask questions. What is the Iwu? Then he realized that the Iwu body mark is a mark, is a tattoo that was invented about 300 to 350 years ago, most probably during the reign of Obairedia. The mark became a mark of identification of the Edo people. Whoever put on that mark is considered a freeborn son of Edo land. Foreigners, slaves, servants were not allowed to wear or sew the Iwu body marking on their body. So it was the self-identification of the Edo man 300 to 350 years earlier to when this story happened in 1981 slash 1982. 1982 precisely. All right. Then he said to himself, but most people now couldn't wear the Iwu body mark. If the people cannot wear the Iwu body mark because it's a tattoo, you have to employ the services of a trado medical personality called the Osiwu. They were armed with the skill of sewing or drawing this tattoo on the bodies of the Edo people. It was their profession, and they were very, very, very good at that. All right? They were very good at that. It was their profession. And until you have that Iwu body mark, you are not regarded as Okweoba. Until you have that Iwu body mark, you are not regarded as Okwoba. So it is a criteria that every Edo man must have for them to be recognized as a full adult. It was the mark of self-identification. Anybody who sees that mark recognizes that they are Edo people and they should be untouched because I show Edo. So he thought to himself, okay, now this idea is not foreign, but it is almost getting to a time where people now wear clothes. All right? If we now say that people should keep or do more publicity that people should have that Iwu on their body, they will not, with the modernization of times, people now wearing clothes and all of that, the clothes is definitely going to cover the Iwu body mark. Then he thought to himself, he said, okay, why can't we replicate what was in the old they used to sew on the bodies of the Edo men and Edo women? Why can't we sew those things on our modern clothes and thereby giving it an Edo cultural ideology? So that was when he employed the services of a lawyer. He went to interview quite knowledgeable Osiwu, people who the trado medical professionals who were skilled in the Iwu body marking. All right. He interviewed a couple of them. That's when they now begin to tell him the different types of the evil, the patterns of it, the exceptions to it, the historical background of how uh, um, the historical background of how it came about. Okay, on how it came about. So he had all of those knowledge. He employed the services of a tailor. Then he gives the descriptions, the drawing to the tailor. The tailor makes several attempts to put it on the body clothes until he was able to get a perfect match to what he was duly described, how the evil body mark really looks like. At that time of history, there were still a lot of Edo men and women who still had the evil body marking on. So it wasn't far fetched. So he had resources, he had materials. All right. So eventually, after he was able to get the perfect description, the perfect clothing, the tailor was able to replicate it the way it used to be or the way it ought to be. He won that cloth, and at that time of history, Agbada ayoredo, we na Agbada na yo, you know. Then that very day, he went to the palace, and Obaride of blessed memory was in company with other guests. And after they were done, you called him Adekita. Adekita is it's the doctor. Adekita, Uviri and all of that. After greetings and all of that, he now said, he knelt down and said, Omo Atokbe, or Timmy Shunite Uni Mawe. And Omo said, okay, you should go ahead and show him. So he removed his agbada and showed Omo both the front and the back of that clothing, of his discovery, of his invention. And he said, I can remember, he never forgets that whenever he tells me the story. He said, Omo actually mentioned three statements or three sentences. Is it not what you guys call it? Three statements. The only thing that Omo mentioned was, I like it. He said, I would never forget. He said, that's what Omo already said, I like it. Then he now said, okay, when my Ali Hameya, Nitota and all of that, he showed all of them and they all loved it. All right. That was when he now dawned on Omoyori that now that we now have a cloth that is now generally accepted by the king himself and his chancelleries, his cabinet members, then it is now we have to do a very big program to announce it to the very Edo people, all of the Edo people all over the world, so that to make it official that the Edo people will know, or the Edo people will come to know that these will now officially, from that moment, become their clothing. So the planning committee was formed, the program was slated, was supposed to be slated as fast as possible. But he had to plead with Omo that Omo should give him time, that most of the Edo people that are now coming, or the generations that will be born in the future, might not really know the story behind the Iwu. That it is only very good that he should be given the opportunity to write a manual for the Edo people to have something to read about, so that they can know what the Iwu is all about, so that they can know the history of what led to the creation of Iwu body marking 350 years earlier. So he started to document and wrote a book, and that was his first published book. The title is called Iwu, the body markings of the Edo people. This was his very first book that he published. However, this is the second edition. The very first edition was officially published November 15, 1986. And that was also the day the book the Benin clothing was officially launched. Why am I telling you all of these stories? The world, the Edo people, has to celebrate this man because the clothes that we wear for our birthday parties, for our marriages, for our burials, for all the functions that we wear, that Agagiyoe, the world will now say these are Edo people, was invented by this man. Was invented by this man. And if this man, Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa, is not celebrated in Edo land, who should we celebrate? He did one of the most amazing things. Everybody knows me that I love wearing Edo clothes. I love wearing it. I don't joke with it. The major reason you can see the portrait of Omonoba and all of that. The major reason we have a cloth that we call our own, something that looks Beninish, something that makes us Benin, was invented by this legend, by Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa, my mentor, the man who I learned almost everything that I know about Benin history from. Funny enough, he also learned that history from his father, who was the first clerk to Obaiweka II. He was a man who knew the old history of Benin that he passed down to his son, who eventually became my mentor, Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa. All right? So that is why at all times I must always be grateful to him. I'm currently doing a project that will be officially unveiled. I wanted to go tell him last week, the week he passed on, that I'm unveiling a project on November 15, 1986, which will be exactly 35 years when the book and the Iwu, the Ewiwu, was officially unveiled. That I was inspired by his works, and because of his works, I want to be able to expand on his ideas that he presented. There's already a manual for it, through having to give Benin a clothing ideology, a clothing field. I don't know how to explain it, but when it's eventually launched, people will see it for what concept I'm talking about. The marriage clothes that you wear, the wedding clothes that a lot of you people wear, are not actually a wiwu. They're not a wiwu. They are not actually, the whole Adan Eben idea is not supposed to be Adan and Eben. Adan and Eben is different entirely from a wiwu. We have to redirect it to tell our story in the purest form. Adan and Eben is completely different from the Iwu tattoo. Well, I found a girl. Beautiful. A lot of you do not know the differences. You people show plot now, which is completely rubbish. It's completely nonsense. It's not Benin clothing style. It is not the Benin clothing that was. Yeah, there's dynamism of culture, but it doesn't reflect our common clothing identity. You must have to have the Iwu to make it Ewiwu. And that's why it's called Ewiwu, not Ewa Dabeben. So I'm working on that project now. The project is currently on. It will be officially unveiled on November 15, 2021. I found a girl so that we can work on something really beautiful and reminiscent to what Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa had achieved 35 years earlier. And that was a project I was going to introduce to Papa to be probably the guest speaker with his big portraits adoring the showroom. All right, the showroom. But right now, I won't be able to have him grace that occasion that day. But all I can promise is that the showroom is going to have a very gigantic portrait picture of Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa, because it is through his knowledge, it is through his leadership, it's through his inspiration that I'm coming up with a concept that can give more feel, that can make Edo people understand what Iwo is all about. Maybe I can show you guys some pictures. All right. This is a Benin chief. This is a Benin chief wearing the Iwu tattoo. This is a Benin chief wearing Iwu tattoo. This is Iwu. If you check it very well, if you count it, you discover it's 7. Now, check Obari Diawa. This was November 15, 1986. This was November 15, 1986. All right, when it was officially launched. Ewiwu. Obari Diawa, blessed memory. You can see him there. He's wearing that Ewiwu marking. This picture was taken November 15, 1986, when it was officially unveiled the what Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa invented, the Ewiwu. This is a Benin chief wearing the Ewiwu, not wearing the cloth now, wearing it on a aisien. But what was shown on the body is what Dr. Aisien now replicated on what is now being sold on Benin clothing. So I'm shouting. Can you guys hear me? Is the audio audible enough? So this is the lady here, the beautiful lady here, is Dr. Aisien's first child. She's a medical doctor in United States of America wearing the Ewiwu. All right? And this was a graphical representation of an old woman wearing a complete facial Ewiwu. Facial Ewiwu. Facial Ewiwu. Nedete agbaguda. The facial one and the body one. All right? And this is my mentor. This is my mentor wearing his invention, Ewiwu. This picture, this photograph was taken in 2002. All right, this is Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa wearing his invention, the Ewiwu. Okay, I'll take it again. Yes, her name is Izewuwa, Dr. Izewuwa, the first child of Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa. She's a medical doctor in the United States of America. She wearing the Ewiwu. This is how Ewiwu looks. For the ladies, it's 16. The ladies show 16 marks on the body, while the male shows 7. All of these things I'm going to unveil on November 15, so that when the Benin people are now started to show body the clothing, they will understand how it should be, not the Adan Eben, they now show on their ceremonial clothes. We are going to stop that, is otherwise going to stop that. We must retain the actual history. While we understand that there's dynamism in culture, but it must be as raw, as original as possible. And that's what I intend to bring about. If you check, if you can't, by the time you count all the markings on our body, you're going to discover that it will be 12. Then the back, we have two lines, making it 16. Now, but for the male only have 7, 5 on the front part of the body and 2 at the back. 2 at the back, making it 7. Now, but when you look at the portraits there of Obari Diawa, blessed memory, and the person giving the mic to Obari Diawa, you will discover that Obari Diawa is wearing, how many would that be? He's wearing 1, 2, 3. 3 at the front, Oh no, four at the front, four at the front. While the young man holding mic, his own is five, two at the back. For Barry Hour, is wearing five, four at the front, while he's wearing two at the back, making Barry Hour's own six. While the other young man holding mic, if you can't very well, if you can see the picture well, his own is five on the front, while two at the back. It's the same thing. Now, that's because there's a story behind it. I'm not going to tell you the story, but know that the princess wears four at the front, two at the back. While the commoners, those who are not princes in Benin, wears five. One here, one here, one here, one here. The Oviwu, making it five. The Evarieke is Semodao. But for the princes, they will wear a Newodao, Evarieke. So the princess wears their Iwu body scarification was 6 in numbers. While for those who are not princes in Benin Kingdom wears 7. Is Semodao, Evarieke. All right, their story behind it. Now, but for the ladies, they were wearing 16. All right, 12 you will dial, like they'll put on 12 front part and 4 at the back. But for the princesses, they were wearing 15. 11 here, 4 at the back. There's a story behind it. All right, but today, a lot of our modern tailors have completely spoiled the true story behind the history of Ewiwu. And that is what I'll be officially launching on November 15, 2021. All right? So that people can actually have an historical but clothing wears. All right? This is the 16 I'm talking about. If you see it, 16. If you can't, to the 16. 16. I'm not saying the facial mark. I'm saying the body mark. You're going to count 12 and there will be 2 at the back. 4 at the back. 16. So, Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa knew that a time will come where there will be modification of the true Iwu body marking. So that is why he wrote a book. That is why he wrote a book to guide us for the rest of, before the end of the world, to guide the Benin people what the Iwu is all about and how all of these things can actually be sown and how all of these things can actually be done. Okay, so I'm grateful to him. In 2018, that's when I read this book. One of his earliest books was written in the early 90s. Benin City, the Edo State capital. All right, it's one of my collections. It's also an incredible book. Now, this book was from birth to death. He's not the owner of this book, but he contributed almost about 4 chapters, 4 incredible chapters to this book. The last book that he wrote, was Ugoton. I'm not with the book, but that was his last. That was the last book that he wrote. But in 2003, he wrote this, ekhaguosa 2003, in a quick story of his first child, Dr. Uwa, Izeuwa. All right, this was one of his works. This is one of my all-time book of Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa. This is one of my favorites. Aisien, son of Erunse and the British. It talked about, because Aisien's grandfather, all right, witnessed the war and was the head of the military might that safeguarded the Olugbohazes. All right, this book talked about it. All right, um, by content, this is his best all-time book. All right, if you read this book, you will never remain the same. All right, the Benin City pilgrimage stations. All right, Obana Mwegi Noa, there are 16 pilgrimage stations the chief must visit before he can become a full-fledged, recognized chief in Benin Kingdom. This book talked about it. This remains his best book by sales. Now, this was put together last year by all of us. All right. I'm a very lazy writer. I was supposed to be a contributing author to this book. All right, because this book was done in memory, not in memory now, to celebrate him. It was supervised by Uyilawa Swanlele. You people have heard of me talked about Professor Uyilawa Swanlele. Uh, Coincidentally, Professor Uyilawa Swanlele married one of Dr. Aisien's ekhaguosa. An historian marrying an historian's daughter. Professor Uyilawa is the only Benin man living or dead that has 2 PhD. He had a PhD in a university in Canada, PhD history, African history in a university in Canada. He has also a PhD in University of Ibadan. He has two doctorate degree in history. All right. So he edited these books. He had written me 6 months before it was published for me to write a chapter. But all right, it's painful that otherwise I would have had a chapter in this book. This book was given to him as a gift by the Institute for Benin Studies, featuring how many writers? Featuring Josephine Ebiwa Abe, all right, Emmanuel Ostewe Akubo, Jane Bogatti, a professor of history, Katie Connell, one of the brightest minds that have documented a lot of history on Benin, Professor Victor Osaro Edo, Professor Konkure Erafona, Simon or John Ehiabi, Osasono Godfrey Hartle, who is the present Secretary General, Institute for Benin Studies. I'm the PRO, Institute for Benin Studies. We have Frankie Pomosa is a senior lecturer, department. We have Joseph Nevadowski, he's late, he died not too long ago. We have Gabriel Obaze. We have another of my mentor, Mr. Ekorogi Obobaifo. We have Mark Ozingbe Ogba. Then we have Idaos Alsage Ojo. We have Esoe Messi Omoregbe, Irene Isoke Onsaye Agunloye. We have Professor Uyilawa Swanlele, and we now have the coordinator of Institute for Benin Studies in the person of Madam Mrs. Ivie Betty Uwa Igbinoba. These were all the contributing authors. This book was written as a gift to remember for his 90th birthday. That was last year. We're all there. All right. We're all there at Imaguero. Why am I giving all of these stories? We're giving all of these stories because he has contributed so much to Benin history, and his contributions can never be undermined. His contributions are most amazing. I want to read one of my favorite appendix of his work. I want to read it. I was reading it yesterday, and it was quite very touching. All right, I'm going to be quite fast when I'm reading it. A speech delivered by Dr. Ekhaguosa Aisien on Saturday, 23rd of May 1987. on the occasion of the Lagos launching of the Edo dress at the Lagos City Hall, Lagos. Don't forget, after he had launched the book in Benin, about 6, 7 months later, it was also launched in Lagos, and this was a speech. It is most appropriate that the first place outside Benin City where the ceremony on the launching of the Edo dress is taking place. I'm reading what he delivered May 3rd, 1987. What Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa delivered, and so I'm reading his speech. It is most appropriate that the first place outside Benin City where the ceremony on the launching of Edo dress is taking place should be the city of Lagos. To the Edos, Lagos is native land and is co-peopled. Page 105, page 105 in the appendix, and is co-peopled and ruled by Benin City people. Oba Orogba founded Lagos. Orogba was an Oba of Benin during the second half of the 16th century. He had an overseas education when young, in that he attended a Portuguese colonial school, very probably in Sao Tome or Angola, or possibly in Lisbon itself. He wrote and read the Portuguese language fluently and was baptized as a Roman Catholic Christian. His exposure to sailing and the sea in his youth equipped him for his later exploits when he became the Oba of Benin. Orogba was the only sailor monarch that the Edos had. He founded Lagos, Eko, as a feed headquarters where he lived for many years, during which time he created a maritime, or more correctly, a lagoon-based empire, whose boundaries were only limited by the geographical extent of the lagoon system that runs parallel to the Atlantic shoreline of the Bight of Benin. When he died, the Edos relapsed into being only a land people. It is true that Orogba's son, Oba Ehengbuda, met his death by drowning in the river Aga on the Lekki Waterway, a section of the lagoon waterway that connected his seat of government in Benin City with his territories of Lagos, Badagry, and beyond. The circumstances of his death in the early years of the 17th century helped, I surmise, to discourage the spirit of maritime and riverine adventures in his successors, the later Obas of Benin. It might be that Ehengbuda decided to try out his father's fighting boat by paying a visit to Lagos in them. The boat, no longer seaworthy, fouled out on the Agan. Agan is River Niger. That's what Edo call River Niger. Benin owns Lagos. She exercised a sovereign control over Lagos until the year 1851, when the British, in their political encroachment on this part of the world at that time, cut off the last tenuous political hold that Benin still exercised over Lagos. 96 years before, that was 96 years before I was born, in the year 1834, the people and chiefs of Lagos resolved to put an end to the reign of their Oba, Idewu Ojulari, son of our Oba Oshilokun, an elder brother of Kosoko, later the Oba of Lagos. The Lagos people communicated their desire through a special deputation to the Oba of Benin, Oba Semede. Satisfied with need to accede to the request, Osemede sent an Ukoba to Lagos to Oba Idewu and requested him to commit suicide. Idewu complied and took poison. He died on the 9th of the following day, clearing the way for Oba Adele, who had in the meantime visited Benin City overland through Oyo to come to the throne of Lagos for the second time. 8 years before the 1859 founding of my alma mater, the CMS Grammar School, Lagos, Kosoko was the Oba of Lagos. Akintoye, his uncle and predecessor Oba, was in exile in Badagry. The British consul looking after British trading interests in the Gulf of Guinea at this point in time was John Beecroft. He was headquartered in the island of Fernando Paul. John Beecroft came to Lagos in that year of 1851 and asked Oba Kosoko to sign a treaty with Britain. The treaty was for Kosoko to undertake to discourage the slave trade and, more importantly, to place the territory of Lagos under the protection of the British monarch. Kosoko refused to sign the treaty, pleading that he would be acting ultra vires if he did so. The Oba of Benin was the owner of Lagos. He told the consul, and it was only the suzerain himself who could sign such a treaty if he so desired. The consul would first have to obtain the consent of the Benin monarch, Oba Adolo, to the treaty before he, Kosoko, would be able to do anything about it. Beecroft went away empty-handed on that occasion. It should be pointed out here that it was this same John Beecroft who 11 years earlier, in April 1840, had arrived at Saple on the Benin River in an exploration of that river. Saple then was a little Urobo village, Uria Pele, on the right bank of the river. Beecroft himself was a trader in the employment of the Scotsman Robert Jameson of Glasgow, and in 1840 was attempting to find an alternative riverine route into the River Niger from the sea. At Saple, he got to where the Benin River divided into two. He named the right branch of the bifurcation the River Olokun, the Ethiop River. The Ethiop was the name of the ship in which John Beecroft was making his exploration. A year earlier, in 1839, Beecroft's boss, Robert Jameson, had arrived at the same spot on the river, that is, at Saple, and named the Igbagon River the left branch of the bifurcation of the Benin River after himself. What he's saying here is that the Benin River at Saple divided into two, Ezenina Zabeva. The right branch of the Benin River at Saple is known to Benin as River Ethiop. It's called rightly Zolokun. But the explorer that got to that river in 1840 rode on a ship, all right, called Ethiop. And he now named that river called Ethiop. You see how Oyibo people, they name our river. The river you call the Ethiop River was named in 1840 by a white man who got to that L junction in the year 1840, and the ship he was riding on was called Ethiop ship. So he named our own river after a ship he rode called Ethiop. So permit me to say that that river is not called River Ethiop, it's called River Olokun, Ezolokun Edutie. All right, but a year earlier, his own boss had also gotten to the point and instead also named the other left bifurcation of the river after himself. And the boss of that John Beecroft was called Robert Jameson. So that left-hand side is called Jameson River. It's not supposed to be called Jameson River. It's supposed to be called Igbaron Edoonye. So two Oyibo people named our own river to their name, and that's what we call the river still did. So that's what Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa is explaining. Nigeria has yet no national language. I want you people to listen very well. Nigeria has yet no national language and no national dress. The English language and the English dress have served to unite the many nations that the British have wedded together as a Nigerian super nation. Lately, especially since the last 3 decades, as overt colonialism died, the separate nations that make up the Nigeria Federation have each rediscovered the essence of their particular ethnicity and they liked what they discovered of themselves. The ethnic language they speak and the distinctive mode of dress they adopted are the outward manifestation of these ethnic uniqueness. They constitute aspects of life that are dear to each of the ethnic groupings that comprise the Nigeria Federation. The Edo people and their capital city of Benin loom ponderously large in the cultural firmament of Nigeria and of Black Africa. So while Nigeria still speaks all the many languages and wears all her multicolored ethnic dresses, it is right and proper that the Edos should encourage the use amongst themselves of their own language and their own ethnic dress. With the launching in Lagos today of the Ewiwu, the Edo dress, it is hoped that it would henceforth be a little easier for the citizen of the Edo kingdom, wherever he might be in Nigeria, to demonstrate with decorum and soberness his Edo-ness on those many occasions when he or she feels the deep need so to do. That was the speech he delivered May 23rd, 1987. He was trying to say that the language and our dressing are the two most unique components that Edo man should be identified with. Should be identified with. And we are all beneficiaries of his intuitive mind and his scholarly approach. And we are very grateful. We're very grateful. May I remind all of you that he told me this. He said, when he came back, when he had returned in the early 70s, having finished his medical school in the University of London, when he got home, he realized that very few things documentation was done about the Edo people. He started to document from 80s. All right, he started to document from the 80s. Now I can assure you, the last sort of academic conversation me and him had, he has over 150 recorded tapes. Remember, I used to tell everybody who has been part of my program for a while that Dr. Aisien Ekhaguosa, when Obani Yedo happened, nobody was able to tell me the story until I went to meet with him 2 years ago. Then that's when he brought his archive, recorded tapes, more than 150 recorded tapes that he had recorded from those who really know the history of Edo people, different aspects of Edo people. He brought one tape. It was labeled of why. When I listened to that tape, I did a 46-minute video, extensive video, as if I was there when it happened, because it was that he recorded that audio 1997 by Ohen Ewomori, close to a local area. All right, gave him that recording, and I was energized. Dr. Aisien still have about 150 of those recorded tapes unpublished. So I'm already in talk with the Institute for Benin Studies. We're going to get all of those tapes. I know he was working on a particular project last year, uncompleted. This year, because when I went to see him about 2 months ago, he was telling me that his typewriter is almost done with that job. All right? We must ensure, Izoduwa will ensure that every of those things that my mentor, Epa Aisien Ekhaguosa, could not publish because age was no longer on his side, will be published in our lifetimes, however it takes. But these becomes even more difficult because we now have to now seek the permission of the family before we can be able to get those tapes and those books. All right, which would have been a lot easier if my daddy was still alive, peradventure. But in all of this, it was a man who dedicated a major part of his life writing and documenting our story. And some of us are proud to speak about our history conveniently, boldly to anybody today because of the sacrifices that Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa made. And to me, he died at the age of 91. To me, it's a celebration of life. He has lived well, lived a fantastic legacies, wrote quite a lot of most excellent books that till the end of time, his works will forever be a guideline to every other historical works that will be done sometime now or sometime in the future. So today was about celebrating him. Today was about speaking so much about someone I love so much. All right, I love so much. Someone that someone that practiced all the things that he preached. Do you know that Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa, to an extent, is a wealthy man? He built his present house at Awogba there. He built a mansion, but a mansion that have hotel window. It's probably the only Benin man that has done that. That was the first thing when I visited him, 2017, that really thrilled me about him. His mansion, his executive mansion, retained the architectural brilliance of the Edo people of the old. His mansion has an otewodo, has an ikun and otewodo. For some of you who do not know what an otewodo means, otewodo, had an open space, inside the house that the Edo people was using to trap water and as well using it to trap oxygen, so that all of these rooms, it was an architectural brilliance of the old Edo of having an open space in the house, while the ikun, the surrounding environment, are all facing this hotel or the open space, so that proper ventilation can enter all of these rooms. So a modern person, a modern house, having an hotel was simply amazing. How he wasn't only just a writer, he practicalized all the things that he believed in. All right. Unlike a lot of us who talk so much about Benin, all right, and yet we don't practice. I had a couple of friends of mine then who talk and talk and talk, and yet none of them has been able to reflect all whatever they say in their life. So, but the aisien was the only man I've seen in modern time that built his mansion and was able to retain the Edo architectural pattern. It was amazing. It was amazing. Just amazing. And if isn't worth celebrating, then I don't know who is worth celebrating. If isn't worth celebrating, if the way I'm talking about him now, people don't get to talk about him, then I don't know who is worth celebrating, because he spent better part of his life writing all of these books, all of these books, all of these books for you and I to read, so that we can. He wasn't even interested in sales. Most of all of these books were given to me as gifts. Most of these books were given to me as gifts. Like this. All of these books, I dashed a couple of them. Before I started. If you read here now, it's signed. He gave this book to me on 2nd of March 2019. Compliment from the author. Most of all of these books, if you go and see him, he will give you all these books. He didn't need the money. He just wanted people to read the book so that they can get to understand. Trying to get cover of some of these things that, you know. So it's uh, so I don't. I've had a very not so happy week though. Losing this. If I was a governor, say I for whole state burial for. See, everybody considers different people for what their contributions are. All right. A lot of people could be very excited, could call a lot of people legends. But you know the kind of people that I call legends? The kind of Dr. Aisien Ekhagosas. Someone who writes so that your history, not for commercial reason, wasn't interesting. He had one of the first private hospital in Edo State. He was the head of all medical practitioners in Bendel in the 80s. So he had probably one of the earliest private hospital. Everybody knows that private hospital, Azoa Hospital, in the entire Edo State, or even in the entire Bendel. After he retired from the Central Hospital in the late 70s, so he and two other of his friends they went into private private sector and all of that. So to me, these are people that we should learn at all times to celebrate because of what sacrifices that they have done. And these are the people I can speak about. These are the people I can speak about. So, um, Institute for Mini Studies. If you want to, Ero Sagumero, we have moved from the back of Palace. We are now at Textile Mill Road. If you want to get these books, on your Google map, type Institute for Benin Studies on your Google map. So it will lead you directly to the Institute for Benin Studies. That's how I can describe there for you. Just your Google map, type Institute for Benin Studies, Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 every day. Institute for Benin Studies is always open. So type on your Google map, Institute for Benin Studies. So it will direct you, it will guide you to our place, and so you can be able to get the books as much as you want to. We have all these books, all of these books. So I think I have to. It was an army general, yes, it was, and by default, not as, how do I put it, more of like an honorary army general, not like he went through the medical this thing. It was it was in he was inducted into the army because he was a medical doctor, one of the highest ranking medical doctors that treated Nigeria army against the Igbo people, the Biafra. So because he was inducted, he couldn't treat them as a civilian. So he had to be inducted first as a military personnel so that he can be able to treat them properly. So through that, he was not promoted when he went to advance. Before he later went to advance his course in overseas again. So he was not promoted as an army general, more of like an honorary medical army general. He was an army general. Mhm. So probably on the day of his burial, we'll shoot gun. Back, 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 back. Anyway, what a great man. So I respect him so much, and I thank Daddy for the contributions and how much he has inspired me. I'm really grateful, and his legacies will always live forever through us, and we will continue to speak about him, and we'll continue to recognize his um, his contributions. So I'm going to be rounding up now. I thank all of you who has been here with me for me to actually speak so much about a man most of you never knew, most of you never met, but someone who had inspired quite a lot of us to be able to choose this line of interest, to pick interest, and uh, um, thank you, Siwa Sas. Um, it was very great. words can words can really tell or express how close we were. We're really, really very close, actually. At times, whenever he was in UK, when his sight became bad, sometime early last year, he will always call me. He calls me Amowhere. Amowhere, why like daddy, I'm fine. Yare Riri, do me on that sort of thing. And all of that. Anyway, I it's painful for me. But he lived a wonderful life, a very wonderful, fulfilling life. No, he was not the chief. He was not the chief. And there's a difference between being a chief and Oba Yivine. Oba already are giving beats, but he was not the chief. He was not the chief. But Oba Yivine. That how do I put it? An elected chief, but he didn't, for obvious reason. I didn't ask him. He didn't become a full-fledged chief. But Oba already are Yivine. Mm. So call me anytime. If you don't want to buy, I can give you a copy. I can dash you some for free. I can give you quite a lot of his books. I'll just buy free books and give to you. At least I own him that. I have to get books for people who want to pick interest to also know him. The kind. Um, yeah, I think that's true. I wanted to do that. I almost forgot. Osai Osifo just raised a very salient point. I think we'll have to do that now. All right. I just want us to calm down. As suggested by our brother Osayo Osifo, we have to give, we have to observe 1 minute silence for our father and our mentor, Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa. So, at the count of three, we observe 1 minute silence for him, for his departed soul. Um, One, two, three. Thank you. May the soul of the departed Dr. Aisien ekhaguosa rest in the bosom of God and our ancestors. Amen. Amen. So I thank all of you. So thank you all who was able to listen to all of my all of my talk. You guys are most amazing. So God bless all of you, and I'll talk to you all next week. Next week. next week Sunday by 7:30 p.m. Oh, yeah, I was. See you guys. Bye bye.